remember some, back in, when I was a kid, that, it was just a quart to a 6-gallon or 5-gallon can or whatever it was. It's, I think, 25 to 1 or something. All those Evinrudes and Johnsons were like that. And then, of course, there was pressure. I think Scott Atwater.
Scott Atwater was the first one. Yes, McCulloch, yep.
Breakthrough with their 100 to 1.
100 to 1,
and
yes.
They advertised that heavily. I remember seeing those ads. And I guess it probably wasn't so successful for them. I think
it forced everybody else to start looking at stuff.
Right.
Mercury did a study in the late 60s, early 70s. There was a service bulletin on it, which I've read, that said that mixtures as high as 400 to 1 had no detriment to the inside of the engine, but the issues were mixability into the gas. That was one issue.
Yeah.
You poured it into a gas tank, a big gas tank, it all went down to the bottom and sat there. So they had to make the oils more miscible.
Right.
But
didn't they add chemicals or something to do that?
Yes, they did. But typically when you started the engine, after pouring this oil in, you got about 10 to 1 in the first gas, and then you were running on 500 to 1 at the end of the gas tank. If you had a big built-in gas tank, a little 6-gallon can, you could shake it and make it work.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, that's about where we are with bearings. But I also want to talk a little bit about lubrication.
Okay.
Oil. And I'm not in a position, because it's pretty controversial, is what oil's the best.
Do you want me to give everybody your address so they can...
Right. But all I want to say about lubrication, because I hear a lot of, you can run that on 50 to 1, or you can do this, or you can do that. All I can tell people is that know your engine, okay? Go back, if you're running an antique and the Lockwood calls for a quart to a gallon, they knew what they were saying. They knew that there were design flaws in that engine, and they knew then that you had better have, if you're racing, at least a 4 to 1 mix with, and of course the Lockwood people.
So you and I could fight about this even right now.
Oh, we could.
Right.
So the question I don't really know much about is, everybody says all the new oils are so great and they're so good and all that. I have no evidence that, other than what people say. I have no belief that that's true. And I do know that long molecular chains, heavy oils are essential on plain bearing engines. So I guess what I'm saying is, know your engine. If it's a roller bearing engine or needle bearing engine, you have a lot of leeway. You can get by with 25, 50 to 1.
Yeah, we're not running these things 24/7. We're running them at a very exhibition runs, very short time periods. So better be safe than sorry.
There's no incentive to play around with saving something, saving money on oil or saving the environment. I mean, it's for the amount that we are out on the water just doing exhibition.
Well, in that
you have to kind of just say, it's not great that I see a little bit of oil in the water. It's not a great thing.
Keycaver had studies done, okay? As part of that study that was done by the feds in '67, it was down on a lake in Florida, and they had two lakes, one of which had no access to it, and it was never touched. And then they had the lake, Lake X, which they were running a lot of their engines, and people were actually fishing on that lake too. And they did a study on those two lakes, and in the post-study, there are surface algae in sunlight which consume any of that hydrocarbon on the surface.
It's well known that there's bacteria that devour petroleum like candy.
Right.
Okay, and that big Gulf of Mexico BP oil spill.
Absolutely.
A huge amount of oil ended up someplace, and
it disappeared.
It disappeared. And
yes.
It just gets devoured by this. And there's also other studies. There was a big oil spill, Connecticut, Long Island Sound, back in the early 50s, and somebody went back and tried to find some of that, and they just couldn't find it.
It was gone.
Yeah, it was all gone.
Right.
So it's no excuse. I mean, to spill petroleum in the water. It's no excuse, but
it's no excuse to wreck one of these poor baby 1920s
maybe
engine,
as bad
right?
as what people say. It's still not a good excuse.
No.
So, but when I say know your engine and lubrication, there's one story that I know of. This fellow had a Gale Buccaneer, and I don't know what year it was, but it was probably early 60s, 12-horse Buccaneer, which kind of is the same size as maybe that Evinrude
10.
15.
Oh, the 15, okay,
Kind
yeah.
of in that size
All right.
range.
You're talking about this engine right here then. When you say 15, this is a 15
Yes,
Evinrude.
yeah, and so,
All right.
so Gale Products made a Buccaneer, and they probably made it for other companies. And it was similar in size, and it was about a 12-horse. And
I remember the engine,
fellow
yes.
had an accident with it. It threw a rod, and when it was disassembled, it was found that it did not have needle bearings. Okay.
All right.
It had aluminum rods with bronze cast-in inserts, and I don't know if he was running it on 50 to 1 or whatever. But I'm just saying, know your engine. If you have one of those engines and it does not have needle bearings, put in lots of oil, and it'll last forever.
Well, I would further say that today's oils certainly have much better lubricity. So my tendency would be to make damn sure if you're going to use 30 weight, 40 weight, or 50 weight oil, I would also add some 50 weight to add to the
right.
lubrication
So-
of the bearings.
So one
be they-
has to ask the question, what are the modern oils designed for?
They're designed for needle bearing engines.
Right. So if you have
Or-
a plain bearing engine, are you willing to say that it's still better for a plain bearing engine?
Well, no. Yes, I am willing to say it's better for a plain bearing engine, just
No, I
simply
won't.
because it mixes with the gasoline much better.
No, you can
It
mix
has better.
Just shake the can. I mean, that's
Well,
not an issue at all.
so as I say, this is that we need to provide boxing gloves to settle this question or whatever. But I would add to Bill that I would spend the money on high quality good marine lubricants, and I'm a particular proponent of manufacturers' marine lubricants. In other words, I would spend the extra money for a Yamaha,
Sure.
a Bombardier, a two-stroke oil, or Mercury's two-stroke
It's
best
actually
oil.
interesting when you look at some of these oils, okay? And on the store shelf, you can pick up a container and kind of shake it. And it basically sounds like, when you shake it, it's got no body to it at all. It's like gasoline or kerosene in a container. And I think what you're talking about, some of these manufacturers' oils appear to have quite a heavy body. They were not.
No, it's the miscibility of it, and it's the additives that are putting in, like Bright Stock. Bright Stock's a very important additive for lubrication, but you also have additives which are detergents to clean the carbon deposits.
Right.
All
Which I
right,
don't
so
care
you've
about.
got to offset it, though. Well, you got to offset that with Bright Stock has the ability to lubricate despite the, these are things that we talk about when we go to service school. So,
Yeah.
having been to service school since the
Yeah.
60s,
For years, I've heard stories about don't do this and don't do that. Your engine's going to be all carboned up. I take my engines apart, and there's nothing wrong with it.
because we don't run them enough.
That's right. That's simple.
Right, that's the bottom line.
Doesn't really matter.
No argument.
As long as you don't have lubrication failure, that's the only goal that we really have.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I learned my lesson with the Lockwood Chief. I ran 50 to 1 new outboard oil in it.
But
The
not-
engine ran very well. I
but
didn't
not-
throw a
not-
rod.
but not
However,
not at 50 to 1.
well, no, I was running it about 16 to 1.
Right.
But when I added 50 weight non-detergent aircraft oil, I picked up almost another 800 RPM because that gave the sealing
Probably. yeah.
quality
Yeah,
to the
right.
three-port engine.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
I had a dramatic increase with I didn't take the engine apart or anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
There's more than one part to lubrication.
Right.
It does a lot more than just lubrication.
Yeah.
So
All right.
we did agree to disagree.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yes,
all
right, that's good, okay.
All right. So we're going to conclude. I think we've covered the bearings. I think
Okay.
we've covered kind of from the early days to the end. And that's, I think, where we'll stop this one.
Okay,
All right.
all right.